One to the regular meeting of the Ross Town Council, Thursday, August 13, 2020. Linda, could you please call roll? You're muted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Mayor McMillan
Yes, here.
and Councilmember Kircher,
Here.
Councilmember Cool,
Here.
Councilmember Robbins,
Here.
and Councilmember, who did I skip? Cool?
Breckus.
Did I say Cool?
Breckus.
Yep.
Breckus, sorry.
Present.
Thank you. Has the agenda been posted?
Yes.
Thank you. Turning to the meeting minutes from our regular meeting, July 9, 2020. I have two tiny changes on page 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 6th paragraph down, second to the last line, instead of will work, it should say will not work. Did you get that, Linda?
Yes.
Okay, and then on page 11, you know what? I don't need to make that comment. That's so picky. I'm not going to make that other comment. Does anyone else have any changes to the meeting minutes? Okay, could we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
Move to approve.
So moved.
Thank you.
All right, let's take the vote. How do you vote, Councilmember Breckus?
Aye.
And Councilmember Kircher?
Aye.
And Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
And Mayor McMillan?
Aye.
And the motion passes as amended.
Thank you. Have the demands been met?
Yes, they have.
Thank you. Now we're turning the meeting over to Chief Masterson for the introduction and welcome of new employee police officer Anthony Spediacci. Did I say that right?
Spediacci.
Thank you.
Yes. Good evening, council members. I'm here to introduce Officer Spediacci, who came over from the College of Marin Police Department to join us. We selected Tony because of his excellent people skills. He's a great officer. So we're going to welcome him. I'm going to give him the oath of office, and then we're going to have a badge pinning. Repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
That I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the State of California.
and the State of California,
That I take this obligation freely,
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion.
or purpose of evasion,
And that I will
and that I will
and faithfully discharge
and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties that upon which I'm about to enter,
And during such time as I hold the office of police officer. And during such time
and during such time
as I hold the office
that I hold the office
of police officer.
of police officer.
Congratulations. Now we have a badge pinning from his grandfather and his uncle. Please come forward. It's his grandfather and his uncle. His uncle Roy is retired from Oakland Police Department. Absolutely. Tony and I have something in common. Tony, when he was younger, his faithful steed, Starbucket. I had a faithful steed as well. Mine was Stardust. But Tony's agreed to to trade in Starbucket for his new faithful steed. Congratulations.
Thank you very much and welcome. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much.
It's challenging to do this on Zoom, isn't it? But that was a lovely ceremony. Now is the time for public expression. It's limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Linda, I don't see any public on the call right now. Is there any public who wants to speak right now for matters not on the agenda?
Yes, we have one here. Rebecca, wait a minute, she disappeared. Where did she go?
Linda, I can't hear you.
I'm not sure why you can't hear me. I can hear you.
I can hear you now.
Okay. We did have someone who had her hand raised, but she disappeared. Here it is. Now she's back. So I will have her speak. It's Rebecca Nessel.
I'm sorry, is this not the right time to speak about the dog park thing?
It's Rebecca, that's on the agenda and that will be coming
Right.
up very soon. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Good to see your face. All right. Next is the mayor's report. School reopenings are delayed due to the pandemic. Ross School is exploring ways to conduct distance learning, including holding some classes on the Ross Common when it is safe to open. Outside areas are safer than inside classrooms. Along those lines, tonight we will reconsider whether to continue to allow dogs on the Grove area of the Common. Last month, council attempted to reach a compromise by limiting the hours that dogs would be allowed there. Unfortunately, this result failed to support Ross School holding classes in the Grove because sanitation problems from dogs remain. Despite the multiple challenges with COVID-19, good work continues in our town. Last month, I highlighted some of the work by the Ross community and our town council. Now I'd like to showcase some of the staff's work. Our town manager and staff continue to work diligently and creatively to keep our town running smoothly. Last month, staff finished gathering information to develop an emergency generator policy in anticipation of more PG&E power shutoffs. Tonight, we begin conversations about how to address our deteriorating fire and police stations. Staff has been working on the Corte Madera Creek flood risk management project to reduce flooding in Ross and the proposed utility undergrounding districts in town. Upcoming capital improvement projects include the Bolinas Avenue and Thomas Court Road rehabilitation, seismic improvements to Town Hall, and tennis court resurfacing at Frederick Allen Park. Thank you, staff, for moving us forward. Tonight, we will be appointing 5 advisory design review members for a 3-year term. Last Thursday, with Planning and Building Director Patrick Streeter's coordination, we interviewed 9 outstanding candidates. We thank everyone who applied, has served, and will serve going forward. We especially want to thank Dan Winey, who is stepping off ADR after 12 years of service to our community. Our small town aesthetics are better because of Dan's excellent contributions on ADR. And finally, please continue to wear a mask and socially distance. Next, council committee and liaison reports. Anybody? Bill, do you have something?
No, I don't.
Okay, I have 2 brief items. We just had a Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority closed session board meeting where we are considering various candidates to be the executive director. And we will be having another closed session meeting next Thursday at 2. and then a regular board meeting next Thursday from 3 until 5. The other thing I wanted to mention is on Monday night at 6 o'clock, we are having a learning session regarding the history of Sir Francis Drake, as well as the history of when the road from Ross Landing way out to West Marin was renamed Sir Francis Drake in 1931. And that's going to be broadcast on many different medias, including the county's Facebook page, and I think it's even going to be on the Comcast Marin channel. So Elizabeth Breckus and I will be listening during the learning session. Next, town manager report.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I just wanted to highlight 2 items on the consent for the public. One is that we're awarding contract for resurfacing the tennis courts. So the resurfacing to get the playing surface in better condition. So that should be happening in September, October timeframe. Also, we're awarding contract for the Thomas Court repavement for those neighborhoods. And one thing I want to point out, with COVID, we've seen a lot of people going out onto the common in higher numbers than before, which has been a good thing. We've seen lots of picnics. We've also seen lots of pizza boxes coming in with Tony Tuto's across the way. And we've been working with Marin Sanitary Service, who are going to put out compost bins in the next couple of days out on the common, and also add 3 days a week of pickup service. And Tony Tuto's also, we were working with Tony Tuto's, and he'll be handing out a flyer that you can compost the box, the pizza, the paper in it. And hopefully this will help with the debris that's sometimes left after the weekend on Mondays. So anyhow, I do have COVID updates, but I will be making that in agenda item number 14.
Thank you, Joe. I don't believe Ross Property Owners Association has a report for this month. So we can go to the consent agenda. Does anyone on the council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Does anyone from the public wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Okay, can we have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Linda?
Yes. How do you vote, Councilmember Breckus?
Aye.
And Councilmember Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
And Mayor McMillan?
Aye.
Motion passes for consent items A through E.
Thank you. Item number 11, Town Council consideration of adoption of resolution number 2177 regarding a temporary prohibition of the public and dogs upon the Ross Common to facilitate reopening and social distancing for Ross School students, faculty, and staff. Joe?
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Before you this evening is resolution number 2177, which would temporarily prohibit the public and dogs on portions of the Ross Common to assist with COVID-19 social distancing regarding use of Ross Common by the Ross School. The prohibition would only begin after Ross School notifies the town that they'll be starting in-person instruction, and within 7 days of in-person school beginning, then dogs would be prohibited from the Ross Common. On school days, the public would be banned from portions of the common from 7:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. to allow for the school outdoor classes and other school activities out on the common. A little background, currently the Ross Municipal Code prohibits dogs from being on the south end of the Ross Common. That's the plain, what we refer to as the playing field. It does not prohibit on the north end, which we'll call the Grove or the shaded area at this time. At the July 9th council meeting, the town council adopted resolution number 2170, which prohibited dogs on the entire Ross Common during the hours of 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Fridays. The resolution was passed to facilitate social distancing for Ross School and Ross Recreation on the Common. Ross School is requesting that additional temporary restrictions be placed on the Common to allow the school to be able to offer in-person instruction once it is safe to do so under the state and county health orders and guidelines. A copy of the request is in the packet from Ross School Superintendent Dr. Michael McDowell, who's on the line, and I'll turn it over in a moment too. While Resolution 2170 assisted Ross Recreation during the summer, Ross School stated that does not do enough to enable the school to be able to safely and effectively operate in-person instruction this school year under the COVID-19 health orders. And at this time, we don't know when Ross School will be opening for the in-person instruction, but we want them to be able to do so, to be able to prepare and us to be prepared so when they are able to start instruction, they can move forward. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Dr. Michael McDowell to explain what the school's proposal was.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Good evening. Thank you, Mayor McMillan and the Ross Town Council members for having me this evening and considering the following staff recommendation for temporarily relocating the dogs on the Ross Common. The American Academy of Pediatrics has strongly advocated for students to be physically present in school. As the superintendent of Ross School, I want to bring students back as soon as possible. The importance of in-person learning is well documented, and there is already evidence of the negative impacts on children because of school closures in the spring of 2020. However, we must ensure that we can do so safely, following all state and county public health orders, CDC and World Health Organization recommendations, and general best practices from the fields of public health and education. These recommendations include health screenings, routine testing, masks, social distancing, hand washing, and increased ventilation. And it is the latter strategy that I want to focus on this evening. One of the best ways to improve ventilation is, as recommended by the Academy of Pediatrics, to use outdoor spaces to engage in instruction. Over the past several months, we've been working on putting together a comprehensive strategy for outdoor classrooms, including a $120,000 investment in permanent shades on our blacktop, along with investments in portable tents to be placed on the blacktop, courtyard, easements, and kinder play spaces within Ross School. One of the unique characteristics of our school is that we do not own or operate a grassy area or an area that has an abundance of trees. We currently pay a third of the maintenance fee for the entire Ross Common and utilize less than that throughout the school year. Moreover, we never use the Grove area of the Ross Common because of the shared use with the community and their dogs. Though we pay for the maintenance of this area and find potential intrinsic benefits for providing outdoor activities for kids, we simply have kept students off this area due to dog ruminants and interactions throughout the day. Today, however, the school faces a unique challenge. We are facing the inconvenient truths that bringing students and staff back together can't be done completely by past practices. We have to limit the number of students in a class, have everyone wear a mask, socially distance, and increase ventilation. Moreover, we need to find outdoor spaces that can reduce heat and are clean so that we can engage in teaching and learning. Our two entities, the town and the school, meet here, and I need your help. We are in unprecedented times, and we need your support on temporarily relocating the dogs for the purpose of instruction. Let me walk you through our plan. Our plan is to conduct classroom instruction twice a day with multiple grade levels. So one set of classes in the morning and one set of classes in the afternoon. We would run approximately 10 classes of 9 students and 1 teacher in the morning and the same in the afternoon. The groups would be spaced to maximize social distancing between cohorts and within cohorts. As a result, we would have about 160 to 180 students and faculty on the common, particularly in the Grove, at any given day once we can come back. These small classes will simply have chairs, picnic blankets, whiteboards, pens, erasers, and water bottles. When staff utilize this option, cohorts will engage in teaching and learning that eliminates the use and need for technology, i.e. screen time, and leverages the use of high-impact instructional practices, including feedback, collaborative discussions, and direct instruction. In essence, we are creating small collaborative circles that we can quickly set up and collapse and reduce the financial burden of paying for more tents and having students and faculty be in the heat. As of now, the school is subject to state and county safety orders, and therefore we are unable to start school instruction for at least 14 days after the county is off of the state monitoring list. Based on our agreements with our local labor partners, we will not start school until approximately 21 days after Marin County is off the monitoring list. As such, we're asking that a temporary ban start 7 days prior to our reentry, and we would notify the town prior to those 7 days. In addition, the school is requesting that specific pathways and sidewalks as located on the map provided by the town staff be prohibited while school is in session. The purpose for this request is to curb community spread. Our plan assumes that every person on our campus is asymptomatic of COVID-19. And as such, we follow a strict adherence to WHO and CDC guidelines, which include screening, hand washing, masks, and social distancing. We, however, are unable to monitor anyone that comes in the public into the public square around our students and staff. I realize, as I say, that this is a challenging request for many community members, and I thank you for this consideration of our needs to educate our children the best we can in the most challenging of circumstances. Thank you.
And just to thank you, Dr. McDowell. Staff feels strongly in this item and supporting the school and the community, and think that is in the greater good of supporting the entire community. It is, as Dr. McDowell said, unprecedented times, and you look at all the changes COVID has had, nothing is normal with this COVID times. And getting the children back in school instruction in person seems of critical importance. The attached resolution 2177 restricts public use on the northern portion of the common, and other areas on the southeast side of the common is depicted in your packet from 7:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. on Ross school days, and then prohibits dogs on the common for all the times during this temporary COVID period. The prohibition, as we said, wouldn't begin on the dogs till 7 days prior to in-person instruction would begin. And if there's the one thing, the prohibition wouldn't stop if somebody, prohibition of dogs, if a person has disabilities and needs a guide dog or a single dog or service dog, the prohibition would not apply to that person. And if there's any questions for Dr. McDowell or myself, we could answer them now.
You're muted. There you go.
No, I'm not. I have a couple of questions. First of all, it's my understanding that notwithstanding that a number of the 160 or 170 emails I've received on this subject, some of them refer to a dog park. The action that we're proposing to take has nothing to do with a dog park. Is that correct?
There is no official dog park. We have an area on the common that dogs are not prohibited, that dogs gather. So that northern portion, and if it would help, if you want, I could get a screen of the map up if council wants. But it would prohibit dogs on the entire common. Right now, dogs are prohibited on the playing fields, and this would expand the prohibition to the entire common. Sidewalks on the outside are still open, and pathways along the streets are in effect, still public ways.
But the point I'm trying to make is that we are not talking tonight about anything about a dog park. We've never declared a dog park. We aren't requesting that we establish a dog park across the street or move a dog park from someplace to somewhere else. The issues tonight do not include anything to do with a dog park. Is that correct?
Correct. It's how the common's used.
Okay.
How the use is allowed on the common.
Okay. And I have one other question, and this one's for Dr. McDowell. Have you given any thought to whether some additional security is going to be needed because of all the children that are not now going to be outside and subject to the attentions of some intruder who just walked in from the street?
Thank you for the question, Council Member. We have that number of students that are in normal years. We have that many students that currently engage in the Ross Common, and we have safety protocols that we put into place for years and years prior to this. So the number of students that we would have on the Common this year would be the exact same that we've had in years past, in terms of, instead of them being in recess, they're now on the Ross Common. We have a great partnership with the Town of Ross Police Department. We work with them hand in hand to make sure that we're providing the level of security that we need to. We have very specific protocols to make sure that we maximize safety. We probably actually have, when you think of the footprint, the number of students on the Common will probably be a bit less with what we're proposing, because we only have half the school there, either in the morning or in the afternoon.
Thanks very much.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? I have a couple of questions. Some people who are big dog proponents have proposed that we deem other areas of the Common for dogs instead of this Grove area. And I'm just wondering, Joe and Superintendent McDowell, why that is not a workable scenario.
So I think I can take this for just a minute, Mr. Chen, and thank you, Mayor, for the question. I think that the ultimate challenge for us as a school is that we need as much workable outdoor space that our students can be on and engage in. And I cannot foresee, I don't know what the future holds in terms of what particular structures or strategies we're going to try to put into place in terms of the Ross Common. Are we going to be able to eventually move to a place where students can play and run and be together and engage in the spring semester, depending on if there's a vaccine or infection rates decline? It is incredibly challenging to have dogs and children play and conduct instruction. It's really hard. We can't pick up dog urine. We cannot pick up all remnants from dogs. It's really hard to have community members close to students when we're trying to keep some level of inclusion or bubble between our students and others, so that they can maintain a high level of safety as well as our staff. And in terms of our current proposal is to be in the Grove in the warm months so that we have shade. And then in the cold months, we would probably be using the other part of the Common so that we would have warmth from the sun. And so we really need to be able to be nimble and adaptable on the Ross Common for this particular year. And then we can look at potential strategies later on, but it really is untenable to have dogs and children engaging with one another in a space in which they play, fall down, sit, lay, and try to learn.
And I have one other question, Joe. Does anything that we're doing tonight preclude dogs and their owners from using the space across the street next to the post office?
No, that it is not. That area is not prohibited. It's just like the space currently is now. It's not prohibited. Therefore, dogs could run on that space on the post office lawn.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Elizabeth Breckus?
Thank you. Yeah, I have a couple questions. One is, additionally, the space across from the town hall is a swath of land that is town owned, and it's kind of more shaded than the post office. Is there any prohibition against dog owners going into that area to use?
That area, dogs could go in that area. It's not prohibited. The town does own it outside about the 10 feet or so closest to the fence of the house is right on the garden. But in general, yeah, that space is available for people to bring their dogs to.
That's the Kittle Park, the old Kittle Park. Is that right, Elizabeth?
Somebody named it Kittle Park. I'm not sure that's a
okay.
name, but the area across the street from the town hall.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And then one other question is, so my understanding is we'll get notice of when the school wants to use the park. If the school's not using it or in winter months, then the townsfolk can bring their dogs there. How are we going to communicate that to, to the residents? I have one final question also.
Michael, do you want to talk about?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Councilmember Breckus. What I will do as soon as we either we're shuttered because of state or county ordinances, I will alert the town. Number two, if we do relocate over into the other part of the Ross Common because we're starting to see a pretty dramatic change in temperature and we're not going to use that particular area, again, I will alert the town on shifts in strategy for our outdoor educational spaces. And then that'll be up for the town and town council to make a decision on what they want to utilize that space for. I will say that because we are in one of the most unpredictable situations that I've ever faced and looking at various strategies, the one thing I would ask is that the school has a little bit of a wide berth in being able to make some of these adaptable changes. So if I move it over to this other part with the sun, there are days in December and January that do get warm and we would like to use those particular spaces, but I will alert the town and say when we think that there may be a pretty dramatic shift for us and we close, or we think that we're not going to be using that space for a set number of weeks or months.
Okay, and I imagine we can email blast the town folks that information as we get it. But, I think the last time we had this meeting, it wasn't quite as clear what the school's use of that area would be. In fact, it sounded like it was going to be the same. And then we had already shut down the dog park, thinking Ross Rec would use it, but everybody was driving by and seeing that it really wasn't in use. So that was kind of part of the consideration. And then I just don't think it was quite as clear about the classroom kids needing to sit under this area and actually conduct classes in smaller groups. And so, as the school has additional needs or issues, do you think you could just really make that clear so that when we have these kind of discussions townwide, we're able to have it really fully and make sure that the people who participated in the meeting, last time it was all the dog owners and nobody from the school, that if we need to have this discussion again, that we can really get a very clear understanding of what's the use, what's the need, what's the issue, so that, the conversation happens one time and it's just a complete understanding. So just in the future, if we could, really be clear about that. And I'm sure your needs will be clearer as you go forward and everything, but I think that would help, certainly with the 170 emails that come through my inbox.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilmember Breckus. And just to let every council member know, that was an error on my part. I miscalculated. I should have been on this call in June, laid out the strategy, and been able to answer any questions to really be able to prevent any miscommunication and to make sure everyone understood our plan so that the council was in a much better position to make a decision. So thank you for that feedback, and I will make sure as future items come up, which there may, given that we are in a worldwide pandemic, that I will alert the council on any agenda items that are brought forward that do impact the school and the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. That's it.
Any other council questions? Okay, let's open it up to the public. Linda, I think there's only one person. That's Rebecca Nessel. Linda?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. You have several hands up, so
Okay.
let's start. Jeff Burkholdt, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Could I just make a comment before we start on all of this? I can't see how many people are going to comment, but just for the sake of all of us, we have received 141 emails supporting the school's use of the Grove, and we have received 6 emails or conversations from dog owners wanting to continue the use of the Grove for dogs. If you, as a public member, already submitted an email, you don't need to repeat everything that you included in your email. You can be really succinct, and we would really appreciate that. And if you are making a statement after somebody else and you simply agree with the prior person, you can simply say, I agree with the prior person instead of reiterating, and that will help us move the meeting along. So we thank you for your cooperation on that. Okay, Linda, go ahead.
So Jeff Burkholdt.
I'm sorry, Linda, we couldn't hear you.
Jeff Burkholdt, you can speak.
Thank you, Mayor McMillan, and hello, Ross Town Council. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeff Burkholdt, and my wife Leslie and I have been Ross residents for the past 9 years. I'm also a trustee of the Ross School, and for clarification, I'm not speaking for the Ross School Board this evening. My wife and I want to use this opportunity to express our strong support for the adoption of Resolution 2177, the temporary ban of the public and dogs on the Ross Common to facilitate the reopening of the Ross School. The ability to utilize the Ross Common, in particular the Grove section, is a central pillar in our attempt to reopen the school with in-person instruction. If that area is allowed to be used as a dog run, either before or after school hours, it will make this area unsafe and unsanitary for both our students and staff. My understanding is a dog run could be moved across the street to the lawn area next to the Ross PO. In full disclosure, and as many of you know, we have a dog. We love walking our black lab Augie around town and on the Grove as well. What our family treasures more is a potential return to in-person instruction at school. Life in the midst of a global pandemic is about making choices and ultimately about sacrifice. While it be a minor inconvenience to temporarily not be able to walk our dog on the Grove, it is without doubt for the greater good. Thank you for your consideration this evening of Resolution 2177.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, next we have Matt Soldo. Let's see. Just waiting for him.
Okay, can you guys hear me? I just unmuted.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, and I apologize. I'm in the car and I'm going to try to pull over so the background noise isn't too bad. But my name's Matt Saldo, and my wife Katie and I have been residents of Ross for the past 3 years. We absolutely love being part of the community. I echo what Jeff Burkholdt and Leslie, they have been our next door neighbors. I echo what they said. I just wanted to relay a personal story because talking in generalities, you know, everything that's been said is true, but man, the remote learning was so hard on my kids. My daughter, who had always loved going to school, was crying about having to, you know, get on these Khan Academy and these other apps. I mean, you know, delegating our kids' education to applications and a face on a screen is just doing our kids a big disservice. And I don't want to see. And I know if I was experiencing this, there's got to be dozens of other parents who were as well. And you know, it's just so important. I love dogs, but I think our kids' education has to come first. And even if you don't have a dog or if you don't have kids in school, people move to our town, for the school. It drives property prices, and I think we all want our property prices to be good. And having our school remain one of the top elementary schools in the state is really important. And I just want to thank Dr. McDowell and the teachers for all their hard work in doing this. And I also really appreciate the council on being so nimble and flexible and being able to consider something like this. I came from San Francisco, where I'm sure that this would take, months or years to be approved. And it's just great to see, small town government at work. So thank you very much for the consideration and flexibility with this.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, next we have Leah Knight.
Hi, I know you've read my letter, so I'm going to be short and sweet. Hopefully, I feel that when Michael, I'm trying to find my notes, says that they don't even utilize a third of the space, that's untrue. I think the main playing field is a huge amount of space. I've heard that the school does not use the Grove area because they don't have the supervision. But aside from the fact that I'm really disappointed, I don't think the council really did their due diligence and asked Michael all about the tents and where they would be placed, and looked at alternate areas where we could possibly give the school a percentage of the Grove and rope off an area for the dogs where the kids wouldn't be playing in the quote unquote massive amounts of dog poo, which there aren't really. We're residents of the community. My kids went through Ross School. I love dogs, I love kids. I think they need learning, but I think the school to get 100% of all of the commons is not really fair, and I don't think they need it. And I think there could be a way to help the residents and the school. And don't forget that the residents, their taxes are paying for, I believe what the foundation website says, 58%. And then the foundation parents pay another almost 20%. That's a lot of money that we're paying to the school to take away everything. And the area across by the post office, if you have a dog, is not gonna work. It's not safe, it's sunny, and the area across the town hall is also not going to work. So I'm just disappointed that when I talked to Linda, she said it was basically a done deal, that you're going to vote. So I'm not sure why we're even having this meeting, but my takeaway would be, consider giving us just a portion of the Grove, because there are plenty of other areas on the main lawn, the main playing field, and the picnic tables and the inner courtyard where we could also put tents, the stage, open the doors to have the kids have their outdoor time too. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Leah.
You're welcome.
I don't see any other raised hands. If anyone wants to speak, now is the time. Here we go. So Rebecca Nessel.
There she
Hi.
is.
Hi, now's the right time. I just want to say thank you for being flexible and again, and considering this again once we have more information. As a parent, as a Ross resident for 7 years, and as a physician, I work at UCSF taking care of COVID patients. I can tell you, if our superintendent in our school says that the safest way that we can keep students as socially distanced and outdoors as possible is to use that area of the grass, I 100% support that. We all know being outside is the safest thing that we can do. And I'm grateful to live in a community that cares so much about our students and all of us. So thank you for considering this.
Thank you, Rebecca. Anybody else, Linda?
Yes, we have, it looks like Amy Sagas. Where are you, Amy? Here you are.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I just want to say a quick word of support for what Mr. McDowell is requesting. And I think this is a short-term solution to a pretty exceptional situation that we're facing. And I agree with what Rebecca said about the safety of being outdoors and wanting to get our kids back together and learning face-to-face with their teachers in the safest possible way. So I would support temporary use of the green for the school.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
I don't see any more raised hands. Last chance.
Anybody else, Linda?
No, I'm sorry, Mayor. I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay. So we'll bring it back to the council for discussion. Would anyone like to go first?
Sure, I'll start. And actually, I'd like to start by thanking Michael McDowell and the school board and the teachers for their efforts to educate the Ross School students during this disastrous pandemic. I think the town should offer whatever support is needed for this effort, and I think this resolution is needed. While some of the dog owners are disappointed, the resolution, along with opening the space next to the post office to dogs, meets most of the needs of most of the residents, and I support it.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Elizabeth Breckus.
Hi there. I just want to say, yes, of course, we all want to support the school, and I do understand what the request is and why it's needed, and so I'm in support of the resolution. Thank you.
Great. Beach or Bill?
Let me go next if that's okay, Beach.
Yeah.
I've listened to the discussion. Of course, I received the emails. I've talked to some people who've asked to speak to me. And it would be nice if there was a way to split the baby and accommodate the dog owners. But I think what we're hearing from the school is that they do need some flexibility. They're working their way through this. They have a plan, but they may have to change the plan. And I think we're in a situation where we really need to defer to the school, which has the responsibility and the expertise for this. And these are elected officials also. I mean, it's not our job as the town council to manage the school. I think we all want to support the school as a way of supporting the community, but we're not educators, and we don't have that responsibility. Of course, we have the responsibility for town property, but I think in this case we need to simply defer to the school's opinion as to what's necessary, and we'll see how it goes. I would add, this is temporary, and we do not know the duration. It's possible the schools will reopen and then have to close again. We just don't know, so it's hard to plan. If it's something that goes on for a long time, perhaps further efforts in connection with a dog park, and as Beach pointed out, we don't actually have a dog park. We simply allow certain things to happen. But perhaps as time goes forward, some other separate consideration could be given to that. But as of right now, I think the resolution, I support the resolution. I think it's the best solution as of this point in time.
And I agree with all that. I think the school really doesn't have a lot of alternatives, and they need to bring kids back and get them in classrooms, or at least avoiding distance learning as much as possible. I think the dogs and the dog owners do have many alternatives, including the area across the street. Somebody in an email pointed out to me that there are 143,000 acres of open space in Marin, which that's a great alternative. We are in a really unique, bad situation with this pandemic, and we all need to be flexible, and we all need to give and take. And, we need to support the school. It is the jewel of our town. I remember when Elizabeth Robbins and I were on the school board and we were trying to build the gym, and we had to go to the town council and negotiate about a lot line adjustment. And, we had to go about 5 or 6 times. It was not a good, compatible relationship like we have now. And I think the school needs to support the town, and the town needs to support the school. And I would hope that the dog owners would understand that we are not making this decision because we don't like dogs. In fact, my dog listens to me better than anyone else in my family. And we're not making it because we don't like dog owners, because many of us on the council are dog owners. We're just trying to do the best we can in a really unique situation. So I totally support the resolution. One other thing I'll say is we tried really hard in July to come up with a compromise because I think in all of our hearts, we want to try to make everyone happy. And there's certain situations where we can't make everyone happy. And that's kind of the situation where we are right now. So with that, I think maybe we should have a motion and go forward.
Well said. I'll make the motion. I move to approve.
Second.
Linda?
How do you vote, Councilmember Breckus?
Aye.
And Councilmember Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
And Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Mayor McMillan?
Aye.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Can I just say one other thing? I just want to thank everyone for all their emails and participation in this issue. Since this just came up on our agenda last Friday, it's pretty amazing that we had so much public participation. So thanks, everyone.
Julie, can I just add, I'm so sorry I wasn't able to respond to everybody who emailed me, but I was just completely overwhelmed by it and sorting through my inbox. So thank you also. And I'm sorry if I didn't get back to you, it's not because it was a lack of interest. It was just more than I could do, but thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right, item number 12. Town Council discussion of Civic Center facility modernization analysis related to fire, police, and administration facilities. Joe and Chief Weber.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Tonight is the start of the conversation on updating and modernizing the town facilities that have seen much, much better days than now. The question before the town council and community is what facilities, police, fire, paramedic, and administration should the town update to serve the community efficiently and professionally for the next 30 to 50 years. I forgot I do want to screen share, so hold on just a second. I should call this up to begin with. Hold on just a sec. Sorry about that. And let me get to my first. Give me one moment. I should do this at the first time. But, I want to give a little overview of our current facilities. The public safety facilities were constructed in 1927, so 93 years ago. There was a new fire bay addition was in the mid-1990s. The police station was built as a residence back at that time in the 1927, not designed for office, not certainly police office. The current building is physically and functionally obsolete. Anybody that walks in there or around there will agree to that. Building largely was constructed prior to the 1986 Essential Service Act requirements for public safety construction, as well as before modern wood construction techniques. There's a significant amount of building deterioration, and the design's not up to public safety standards. The fire bays are below the 100-year flood elevation. And we're at a point that the on-duty fire personnel have been sleeping in a portable trailer, not the building itself, the fire station. They sleep in a portable trailer since 2005. And the other part of this is administration staff, the town development staff, planning, building, public works, is in a temporary portable at the side of Town Hall. So also in updating those. So as I said at the start of this, this is the start of the conversation. Tonight we're going to provide a 30,000-foot flyover. We have the results of a number of consultant studies that are included in the staff report that we'll be reporting on tonight. And we're not looking for a council decision until November or December to give you time, the council and the community, to understand, ask questions, get additional information, and have a community involved in this discussion and the process. And the question then is, the decision we need in December isn't how to design facilities, that would follow this action. It's what facilities between the police, fire, paramedic, and administrative should the town update and modernize to serve us for the next 30 to 50 years. And there's a lot of factors in this decision. There's clearly a lot of community considerations of what's best for the community and the residents and businesses. I look at this project and I typically look at what are the town's 6 goals that this project follow. And in this case, it's probably all of them. Clearly, this is about helping create a safe environment and improving emergency preparedness, enhancing the effectiveness and efficiency of providing services. It's about sustaining financial stability and responsibility. It's about improving our facilities. And if we do this right and get the community involved, it's about also fostering and hopefully strengthening community involvement. Obviously, there's a lot of operational, service, and financial considerations, and we'll be going through those, starting in this meeting. And there's also multiple stakeholders. This decision is for the town residents and businesses, but it also potentially affects other neighboring jurisdictions. Depending on which option looks like we're analyzing to move forward with, it could affect the Ross Valley Fire Department and our partner agencies at San Anselmo, Fairfax, and Sleepy Hollow, since we are part of the same JPA. Also, Kentfield Fire District has a role if we're getting services from there. And also the Ross Valley Paramedic Authority, which operates out of the station here. Moving on to the structure itself, we hired a construction management firm, Construction Development Solutions, to do an assessment of the building. There's numerous structural deficiencies, lack of seismic upgrades at the foundations, seismic concerns because there's an irregular building shape. And when I do show a graphic of this in a few minutes, you'll see what I mean by that. There's infill constructions, lack of floor girder connections, and there's deficiencies alone that will require substantial reconfiguration, and they found not feasible or cost effective to repair. The mechanical systems are at the end of their life expectancy and need to be upgraded to Title 24 standards. The plumbing, water system's corroded and needs to be replaced in its entirety. There's certainly pests and organisms that they found, termite, rodents, fungus. They found, in what they could see, significant impact. And we can't see all areas to see how much, because some areas are covered, but there's clearly significant damage. To show a few photos of it, this is the back and side. And now, can you guys see my pointer? Okay. You can see this is a typical section. You got wiring running around. You can see the paint. It's not in good shape. This building is beyond its life expectancy. There are these infill construction. The original fire station was connected with parts that have pretty low level of construction grade to begin with. You have windows that need to be replaced, and we have a contract replaced, but there's a lot of damage. There's cracks in innumerable places throughout. We have roofs that need to be repaired and also just replaced. And you can also see the hodgepodge of construction that really this thing had. You have a lot of different things going on here. And remember, this is the active, this is in the fire station. You got, I'm not sure, this one was water damage. I know this lower one's in the police station. This was water damage here, coming in from the top side and various angles. This is in the fire station. This is, I believe, the upstairs office area. Clearly water leaks from the outside. A lot of issues. Now, this area was, we have closed off. The leaks and molds were very bad here. We have now closed, several years back, closed this whole area off that you can't get into this building. It's part of the building. This was interesting, and I didn't realize, I'd seen it, and I didn't realize what this was used for. We have this, I think, a couple places in the fire station. This is a dehumidifier because the air conditioner can't bring the building to a cool enough temperature, so we have to rig things to try to help get the building cool temperatures. This is a back stairway. We replaced the treads and steps slightly for safety. At some point, we will need a full replacement of the stairway itself. This is one of my, one section of the building in I think it was 2012, 2013. The idea was they were going to renovate part of the fire station, that one of what was originally a house, to be able to get the firefighters, instead of being in the portable trailer, to move them back into one of these fire units. Once they started uncovering to start the construction, they found a lot of other issues, and it was deemed the project should be stopped, that there was not a good way to do it. It didn't make sense. This part is part of the closed off, both these pictures. There's holes in the floors in places. You can see this is a bathroom that would be the bottom of the shower. And there's another hole, I think, further to the side of this. You know, basically the summary, you know, the physical conditions, that's not the only issues here. It's, there's other constraints that make rehabilitation option expensive, and beyond just the issues that we're showing of structural and mechanical and plumbing and other issues. We have a very irregular building layout put together, spliced together over time. It's inefficiently sited on the parcel that lacks depth. I'm going to go aerial and really to go over the whole site. The original, and everybody can see my arrow, and I can't see faces, so let me know if you can't. The original fire station was the middle portion with the bays up front. In the 1990s, the bays were too small to house. Engines grew in time. And so we had to add a new addition, which was back here with the fire bays used today. Now, this isn't the greatest location. Obviously, it would be a lot better if fire engines and paramedic could get on more quickly onto the road. Instead, you have to go through here. And issue number two, another is this whole site ingress and egress. We have public staff coming in here. You have our staff and the public going here, the same as our emergency vehicles, our paramedic, fire, and police. And there's been several times I've been turning in myself, a paramedic or police come with sirens on, and you're turning, and you're just trying to stay away because this is a narrow corridor. We should not have an interface, the public safety vehicles, with the public or staff. Now, you find a way to get over. Obviously, it probably slows response down some set number of seconds when you're dealing with it. You know, ideally, there would be a separate fire, police, a public safety entry, and probably lined up like Kentfield with the light at Laurel Grove instead of being down here, and two separate entries. But back to the building spliced together. You can see these were the original house. This was a house for fire, both of these, both the residents. This is now the police station here. The infill construction was here that was poorly done to connect these things together. You have courtyards. It makes seismic almost impossible beyond to try to do this. We have now, because we closed off this section, we had to add the vehicles moved from the front base. Some of the vehicles this is a carport to have some of the fire vehicles under here. This here is the portable that the firefighters have been in since 2005 that sleep on site. And you can see not only is it odd that we have a fire station here, but this is also a ways away when calls come in the night and they're in the sleeping quarters to get you lose some time, obviously getting from here over to where the fire engine is at. Looking at other part, this here is the portable with the development service staff. So we have 5 staff, a public counter, normally 5 staff. Obviously COVID, I reduced staffing there for safety, but we have staffing here that's a portable sitting at the side. So just to give an idea of some of the site, and at the north end, we have our Public Works Corporation building, and we do control the lot here. The other constraint here is we're at the top of the creek bank. Our parcel goes to mid-creek or slightly beyond. Obviously, this parcel is only 2.33 acres. So one of the challenges is when you construct facilities, is there enough room for parking? Obviously, we're already finding parking challenges at times now. That I think showed some of the irregulars of the building layout. And I've also talked about the site traffic circulation. So without changing the site, we would still have these issues. And then there's the flood risk. The fire apparatus bay was inundated by the 2005. They opened the doors and let the waters run through. Even this 2017 storms, we relocate all the fire and police because waters are in through the parking lot, even the 2017. We relocate everybody, staff, police, and fire, locate over at Marin Art and Garden. So now we have flood emergencies, one of the important times, and a lot of calls for service for public safety, both fire, paramedics, police, and public works. And we are located across the street from where our offices are. So it brings to the overall summary of what CDS found. The building systems and components are at a diminished level of integrity. We've clearly exceeded the life expectancy. In addition, we have non-compliance with public safety construction. CDS found that it would be cost prohibitive to correct the issues related to the ESA non-compliance due to some of the building issues, but also the seismic and flooding issues. And given the building deficiencies, the cost of reconstruction could easily equal or exceed the cost of building new building. The finding is similar to in 2010. There was a study done by MAC5, another construction management firm, and they found at that time that it would be, their conclusion was it would be, in 2010, it would be cheaper to reconstruct, to rebuild than try to rehabilitate. If there's any questions, either I could take them now on the buildings. I'm going to move forward to options and then have the fire chief. And we could either take questions at the end from council or I'll move all the way through. Maybe it's better to move all the way through. Okay. We see as went through that really there's 4 service options for the future that we're looking at. One is option 1. And this is kind of ranging from the whole range. Option 1 is rebuilding everything we have now, really. Fire, paramedics, police, and administration. Option 2 removes the paramedic quarters, so the fire station could be slightly smaller, so you would still have firefighters, but the paramedics would move Ross Valley Paramedic Authority, and the chief will describe a little more how they interact with the fire and police. They wouldn't be located here in option 2. And option 3, we have make a joint building of police and administration and use paramedics, put them in a modular building, but no fire station. And then option 4 is a police and administration building with the fire and paramedics being services coming off-site, but not from within the town of Ross. And with that, I'd like to hand it off over to Fire Chief Jason Weber, who will discuss the fire and paramedic operational considerations and also some of the results of the Citygate study that was done related to those services. So, Chief, if you're there.
Thank you, Joe. Mayor and council members, thank you for having me here tonight. This is an important discussion, certainly an important decision moving forward. And kudos to our mayor, who has been on marathon Zoom meetings for the last several hours. I have seen her, so.
As have you, Chief Weber.
You know, I think to start, it's important for the council to understand there's no law or regulation that determines the level of fire protection or EMS services you provide your community. It is discretionary. And as a municipality, you are required to provide something, but it could be as simple as a pail of water in the middle of a town with a bell to what you have, you know, today, which is municipal fire protection. Obviously, I don't think any of us would suggest or recommend we move forward with the first option I mentioned, but I think it highlights that this is discretionary, meaning that we're gonna have to have a lot of conversation about service levels, and there's trade-offs for everything. And part of those are costs. Others, as the town manager mentioned, are impacts to our stakeholders, you know, either other members of the fire department agency, neighboring fire department agencies, our labor group, and obviously the community and your council, most importantly, to make this important decision. Being around a lot of fire stations, I can tell you this is probably in as disrepair as any, and no fault of your council or the town. It's a 100-year-old building, and it certainly is due for replacement. As the manager mentioned, Ross is one of 4 members of the Ross Valley Fire Department JPA, which consists of San Anselmo, Sleepy Hollow, and Fairfax to the west. It's important to look at the fire service as a whole. It's a collective. We respond together. Historically, towns had small fire stations with a volunteer fire force that responded, and that's why our fire stations are often in little downtown areas, not the most ideal location. And as municipalities were created, you know, a lot of them were built around their town centers, similar to Ross. And the challenge now is that we have a built environment and a lot of different municipalities, many consolidations and JPAs across the county. But when we look at these decisions around facility replacement, we have to be strategic. These decisions, you know, last 50, 75 years. So it's important that we take our time. We're going to provide the information that Joe mentioned. We had Citygate come in and analyze a lot of the data so we could answer questions from your council as well as the community about what the service trade-offs are when we talk about these different options. The Ross Valley Fire Department serves around 25,000 residents. You know, 2,550 of those are in the town of Ross. Daily staffing includes 9 personnel on duty, 2 on each of the 4 fire engines, and then a battalion chief that supervises those individuals. Additionally, you have 2 paramedic firefighters that are Marin County Fire Department employees that are based out of Station 18 here in Ross. And they work under contract for the Ross Valley Paramedic Authority. The Ross Valley Paramedic Authority has 2 ambulances, one down in Corte Madera and then the one in Ross. The one in Ross really serves from Highway 101 to the east to west, just west of Fairfax, at the Woodacre Fairfax border. So it's a pretty large service area with all those communities in between. Paramedics on medic team are cross-trained as firefighters as well, and they add to our overall fire response. Next slide, Joe. So when we talk about some of the numbers, when we look at this consideration, Ross enjoys a relatively low fire volume, which is a good thing. It's typical of communities like Ross. We're not a community in crisis that is having a lot of medical emergencies and fires on top of each other, and that's a good thing. So when we look at responses of Code 3, so lights and sirens, things that require we get there immediately, around 300 incidents over a 2-year period. About 85% of those are medical dispatches, 2% are for fires. And we look at that 2-year period, we had about 3 actual fire occurrences in the town. 2 were in structures, 1 was in vegetation. Ross enjoys today overall good response times for a suburban community at about 7 minutes and 55 seconds. Those response times are inclusive of the time the dispatcher picks up the 911 call, logs it into the computer, sends out a dispatch, the time it takes the firefighters to get to the fire truck and start going and then arriving at the call. There's things we can adjust in that and that we do regularly watch, like dispatch processing times, get out times, so the time from the bell goes off to the firefighters' wheels turning are adjustable. Response times as it goes from the station to a location are things we can't fix, right? That's road patterns, that's roadway speeds, that's driving safe, those kind of things. If there were a change in staffing of one of those other options that doesn't include fire or doesn't include fire and EMS or some combination, if we're using an allied agency's resource from San Anselmo or Kentfield respectively, it would increase the response time by about 2 minutes. So it would put us at about 9 minutes and 55 seconds on average. So some would be a little more, some would be less, but on average it would be about 2 minutes more. Going back to why we're having this conversation, and we wouldn't have this conversation if we didn't think there were service options. We're bringing those to you because there's trade-offs, as we mentioned. If your paramedic ambulance stays in town, 85% of those calls that I talked about are EMS related. The ambulance is generally available about 85% of the time, coincidentally the same number, as there are calls in Ross. So if there wasn't an engine there, about 85% of the time, your response time would essentially remain the same at 7 minutes and 55 seconds for definitive care arriving at your door. One of the things that your manager had asked me to look at was associated impacts with the Insurance Service Office ratings. So insurance is often rated or uses an ISO rating to determine the rates. The ISO ratings can be a bit challenging from the perspective that if you adjust a single station, you may not be adjusting your system. The ISO rating is based on the system for Ross Valley Fire Department. So if we were to lose an engine in that area, you would have increased response times for some of the overall department, but not all of it. So in speaking with ISO, I think that this change would be relatively nominal, and that where we're seeing bigger insurance challenges has to do with vegetation and the wildfire threat, not necessarily the municipal fire side of things. And a lot of weight is given in the ISO rating to water supply and distance from a fire station. And in this case, your distance to other fire stations, 1.1 miles to the town of San Anselmo and Station 19, and then about just over half a mile from the Kentfield Fire Station. So ISO looks at homes that are within 5 miles of a fire station and 500 feet of a hydrant and the water supply it has. That has most of the weight. There's other things like the staffing in your fire department and things that add to those points. Next slide, Joe. So in 2017 and 2018, which was the data set we used for Citygate to study, and I think it's important also to recognize our data sets are relatively small, right? These aren't massive numbers we're talking about, so there can be variation. But Engine 18 responded to 60% of the calls in Ross, 28% in San Anselmo, Fairfax, Kentfield, et cetera. This was the same way when Ross had their own fire department. I would suspect those numbers are very similar just because of mutual aid. So not a lot has changed there. And again, going back to Ross not being a community in crisis, it has a relatively low population, 850 homes. There isn't a huge service demand. So again, this bullet point talks about that similarly. 145 times the Ross engine went to other responses. Sorry, give me a second here to catch where I'm at with this bullet point. I think similarly, moving on, one of the other considerations when I spoke with Joe was how much of Ross is sprinklered. How many of the homes have sprinklers in them, which is a great way to fend off any issue from fire. And we're estimating that about 170 of the 850 homes roughly in Ross, or 20%, have sprinkler systems in them. We're averaging about 18 sprinkler permits annually. So this is considerably higher than most communities, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that when people buy new homes or do substantial remodels, which is pretty often in Ross, it's an opportunity to upgrade the systems in the house, and we have an ordinance in place for substantial remodels that does require sprinkler systems. And that's a good way to provide protection to your community. I think that's all the slides, Joe. And again, I think some of the important highlights from this are this data can be used as part of the discussion. I commend your council for taking on this subject. We know the facilities need to be replaced. And anytime you're looking at spending a large amount on capital, you have to look at the service level, other ways of doing business. And I think that, as I've talked to the firefighters and allied agencies, I think this is an opportunity for us to look at fire services across the Ross Valley, what opportunities exist for doing things differently than we've conventionally always done them. And I think that, the next few months as your council in town is working through these decisions, paralleling those will be conversations with the management team at Ross Valley Fire Department, our firefighters, our other Ross Valley Fire Department member agencies, Kentfield, and even beyond in the Ross Valley. And I will look at this as an opportunity to make positive change potentially as we work with your council and your town on this decision. And of course, I'm open to any questions.
Or we could have questions at the end. I'll continue. Thank you, Chief Weber. The town hired Mary McGrath Architects, who specialize in public safety and civic buildings, to develop a high-level conceptual site plan for each of the various building options, that options 1 through 4, along with providing a rough cost estimate for each option. And the cost range was from, at the high end, if we rebuilt everything, which was option 1, 28.4 million. Thank goodness, these facilities are expensive, not that expensive. It's 28.4 million. And then if down to 12.2 million if we only rebuilt the police and administrative put them in a building. These are all rough conceptual plans, preliminary estimates. But we really needed these level of cost estimate to really gauge some of the trade-offs. We looked at, as Chief Weber discussed, the Citygate study and looking at the operational considerations, and now this is the cost side. Option 2 would be we reduce the fire station in size some if by having the firefighters still here, the 2 of them, but having the paramedics relocate to a different location. My guess is it would likely be either at San Anselmo or Kentfield. Just so you know, it relates to the paramedic calls for service. When Citygate did the study, there is almost exactly equal number of calls going to the east of us as going toward Highway 101 is going to the west toward Fairfax, meaning we are the center point of calls for service for the paramedics. Obviously, if it moved, it would shift the midpoint of the calls they're responding to in total. The third option was, well, the fire, quite frankly, is the large part of the building square footage is needed for fire. If you notice this, that's where the square footage, about 8,000 square feet relates to fire. If you had the paramedics here in a modular and put the police and administration on one building, the cost estimate was $14.6 million. And then, as I said, if you just did the police and administration, you'd be at $12.2 million. And this also showed the concept of how many square feet in total was being built under each of these conceptual plans. And that brings us to the potential funding sources. The town currently has existing fund balance in our facilities fund of about $4.3 million. Reasonably, in 2 years, we'd have around $7 million. That being said, we're going to need some kind of financing, likely debt financing, to pay for the balance of the cost of facilities. All the types of votes here, I've listed 3 different types of mechanisms. They all require 2/3 voter approval. There's the general obligation bond, which is an annual tax. And all of these would likely be 30 years. The debt financing on any of them would probably be a 30 years. A general obligation bonds based on the assessed value. It has the overall lowest debt service cost of any of the 3 because it has the highest credit quality and efficiency of financing. There's a certificate of participation, which in itself doesn't need a vote, but it's a lease transaction that needs a revenue source, which would likely be a parcel tax. And this is similar to, we already have a public safety parcel tax that's currently at $1,069 per parcel. This would be an additional one for capital facilities. Or there's a community facilities district. It works in a lot of ways. It has some similarities to the parcel tax, and it will be a fixed amount, not tied to assessed value. The credit quality is probably a little better than a parcel tax COP, so debt service would probably be slightly lower. The other source, and this is one to determine if it's available, are donations or other contributions. The story I've heard before, in the mid-1990s, when the town needed to build additional fire bays, because as we said, the fire bays were too small, and we added the new addition, that most or all the money was raised by a fundraising effort. So the question is there opportunities for donations or contributions for part of this cost? Just to show what does it mean, we could say these cost $12.2 million, $28.4 million. What does that mean to individual parcel homeowner? I took looking at debt service for the general obligation bond and did something per $1 million assessed value. To get $10 million, it would be a $243 tax. So if you had, $500,000 assessed value, it would be $120. If you had $2 million assessed value, it would be double it, so $480. So it would change based on assessed value, and you can see with the $20 million, it doubles to $485. Looking at a parcel tax, to get the same $10 million, you need about $708 per parcel, and then double that to get $20 million. Note that, all these, the underwriter that provided me this information did it based on somewhat higher rates than today, but still very low interest rates. Obviously, we're at really a pretty historic low interest rates. So the tax levels, could be higher than this if interest rates increase. Say it's going to be 2-3 years away from when we issue bonds. It depends on the interest rates at this time. But this gives you a good order of magnitude as we go in this discussion. And that really brings, some questions for council. As I said, we're at the start of this conversation. So in the coming weeks and months, this really is about what is the long-term vision for public safety facilities in Ross. And as Chief Weber highlight, there are a number of other stakeholders involved. Our partners in Ross Valley Fire Department, there's the fire labor, there's Kentfield, clearly, and obviously the Ross community, what type of services and what levels and costs, there are trade-offs. The second point gets to, we currently have the public safety tax out there, and that's for annual cost of police and fire, and it's a vital part of our budget. It's now at $1,069. It expires in the last fiscal year of its fiscal year 24-25. So we'll need to get that passed for the operating side in November 2024. So, obviously you have two components. You have to pass that annual services one, but also this capital side. And then what is the process the town wants to follow to receive significant public input on this very, very major decision? Our goal was to get as much community input as we can on this decision. And any ideas for outreach, we put together some dots in the staff report in here. Clearly we're going to be holding additional workshops and council meetings between now and December. Looking to have a website with dedicated project information so anybody can readily find for this project. Using our townwide email, and that townwide email, we have a great reach, quite frankly. I mean, we have 1,200 emails. We have 837 parcels. Oh, I meant to say that on the taxes. When it comes to taxes, we have 837 taxable parcels. And we have 1,200 emails. We have good outreach. I hope anybody that's on this call for the public, if you're not in our townwide email system, please contact us so we can get you in our townwide email system. We think we should do a resident survey in this process. We'll use our town newsletter the morning after and have a monthly articles on it. And then stakeholder outreach. We have various groups we'll want to reach out specifically to, like the RPOA, Age Friendly Ross, the school groups, if there's somebody we could come in contact, and Ross Auxiliary, whatever groups we could get to also help provide information and update and to hear feedback would be good. In addition, as the chief and I mentioned, there's stakeholders outside of Ross. We will be having conversation with the partners in the neighboring jurisdictions, both within Ross Valley Fire Department and Kentfield, depending on the options we're exploring around the fire and paramedic side of it. And with that, I wanted to just real quickly, as I said, the decision's not till December, and the decision we're looking at isn't the design, how we're designing for now. This isn't about design, even about the size of the facilities, not about are we, to the degree we're rehabilitating anything or building from the ground up. The decision that we need by November, December is what facilities do we want to build? And using that community engagement and workshops through December. Goals to have a council decision by December. And then we start that next process, the Civic Center Master Plan. We're looking to hire a consultant to move the project forward. And that's where we get into how do we, whatever elements we decide, is it the design, the look, the feel, how does it fit on the parcel? And at the same time, when we have enough project description, we start the environmental analysis, and then that will go concurrently as we finish up the development of the master plan in the first 3 quarters of 2021. Then if council, our thought is after council approves the master plan, whatever that is, and the environmental analysis gets certified, we go to the ballot for a potential ballot measure. There is, given we need 2/3 vote, we could do the ballot measure earlier, but the risk is residents will say, I don't know enough information. Like if they try to vote on what we know today or in December, they're not sure what the facilities look like, the size exactly. I mean, we have rough ideas, but so the thought here is we'd wait to do the ballot measure till after we know what, so voters know what they're actually voting on. And as we mentioned, depending on the option selected by the town council and facilities to construct, for example, if fire or paramedics is not, we have other negotiations and agreements with other entities will be needed. And with that, that wraps up the presentation, and we are available for other, we're available for questions. And I'm going to close my screen sharing so we can see people, if that is fine. I think I'm closing that. With that, I'd like to bring it back to town council.
Great. Thank you, Joe and Jason. Those were both excellent presentations. Comments, questions from the council? Elizabeth Breckus.
Hi there. So, you know, a couple things when I read the report that came to mind was the public works yard is a yard that, you know, seemed to kind of only be considered in one of the options. And I wondered if we wanted to think about that. I think it would also be helpful, that public works building, which I've toured before, but it's been a while. I think it'd be good to understand the functionality of it. Another thing that occurred to me is the town also owns the post office, which is in very poor repair, could potentially host some portion of civic facilities if we wanted to rebuild and go up. I mean, I know this adds to the price tag, but I'm just saying, you know, we should probably understand that, because I would hate to go out for a bond on this issue and not understand the life of that building and then not consider what the usability of it is. You know, I do think that it's going to be really important when we do a survey to make sure those questions are appropriately asked. And I hope that staff will let council, you know, look at those, because it's all about how you ask the question, right? You know, I think of all the things that seem important for us, it's paramedics staying in that. If I had my dithers, it would be fire too, and police, but you know, paramedics, because we have more paramedic calls and we have an older population and we need the paramedics to be there. But again, you know, I would prefer all three. So, you know, I think it's important that we do the community engagement. I know we plan to, I know that's an important part of it. But you know, it certainly is one of those things where, you know, you got to judge the temperature of everybody in town to, you know, pay the bills. And the one other comment that I just wanted to make that occurred to me when I reviewed it is we talk about how much we currently have in our facilities plan, and then in 2 years we're going to get $2.5 million more. And you know, everybody wants to remodel as quickly as possible, and I understand how dire the facilities are, but I think we also need to at least think about the fact that if we can sock away $2.5 million in 2 years, well then should this be a 4-year thing so we can ask for less? So anyway, those were just thoughts I had. That's it. Thank you.
Beach. No, you just muted yourself. Yeah, you did. There you go.
All right. I still have trouble with keeping straight what mute and unmute mean, and I apologize for that. One other thing that I think we ought to be prepared to deal with is that an option may occur to some people in terms of why do we need new administration spaces. I understand that we're in a temporary building, but we're not in the building that's rat infested and so forth as the same way as the other facilities that we're talking about. So I think we ought to have an answer about why we couldn't just continue to rent or buy a facility of the sort that we have for our administrative spaces.
Elizabeth Robbins.
Hi, thank you, Jason and Joe. That was really helpful. I think that it's really important that when we reach out to the community, the data is really clear, you know, and you presented it well this evening. How many fires are there actually in Ross over the last year or two? How many paramedic calls? I think as Elizabeth said, I'd be surprised if anyone wants to not have the ambulance located here, because that seems to be in everyone's best interest. And I think, I mean, I just think it's important that we make it clear what could be here, and if not, if fire isn't here, what difference would that make? You know, it'll make some difference, but perhaps not a lot of difference. Whereas I think losing paramedic would make a big difference. And we would still be paying for it. We just wouldn't have the ambulance right here. So that seems almost obvious that we would want to keep the paramedic service here.
Bill, do you have anything to add or questions?
Yeah, I just have a question about the relocation of the fire personnel and equipment. As I understand it, there are 4 stations now in the Ross Valley Authority and 4 engines. So if we close the Ross facility, do we still have 4 engines, or is the Ross Valley Fire Authority now down to 3 engines? In other words, is there a place to put it, and would it still be needed and used? Our engine that's now housed in Ross.
So council member, I think that the key here is we have a lot of conversations to have about the service level, service model. Part of that conversation has to occur with our stakeholders, the Ross Valley Fire Department, other members, before we make that determination. So whether it's a shift of some personnel, all personnel, contracting for services with Kenfield combined with still providing some services from the Ross Valley Fire side. And there's beyond fire response, there's also membership that's important with fire prevention program and other things. So those are all the conversations we need to have over the next few months so we can come back to your council, Joe and I can, and talk about the service options, you know, and how the council and the community feels about that. I know I'm kind of dodging your question, but I think it's too early to answer it is what I'm saying. I guess we're going to have to explore those options, narrow them back with costs, cost benefit, and the impacts.
And in terms of the information and the reports that if we did close our station, there would be a slightly slower response time most of the time. Is that slower response simply because the engine has to come from farther away, or are there other dynamics?
Yeah, no, that would be the reason why you'd be getting the neighboring engine.
Okay.
I just have a couple questions, and then Elizabeth, you can go. I'm just wondering, I know Belvedere does not have a fire station in its town. It uses Tiburon. I'm just wondering if there's any other towns in Marin or similarly situated, maybe Montecito or I don't know, some other towns like Ross in California that don't have fire stations. And I was originally of the view that, oh, you know, option 3 is the no-brainer option. We definitely want to keep the paramedics. I'm not sure we need to spend, you know, a huge amount of money to have a fire station if there's only 2 3 fires in the last couple years, and one's vegetation, 2 are structural. But I did receive a phone call right before this meeting, and I thought it was a dog person, so I was like, oh, I'm not answering that. But it was someone commenting on the facilities who is adamant that we have to have a fire station in our town. So I think we're going to need to get a lot of public input. And the other thing that I'm interested in knowing is how much longer are residents going to be paying for the Ross school bonds? And is that amount going to be going down because so many houses are changing hands and they're being assessed at their higher value? Because, you know, when you, Joe, I shared with you my property tax bill, there is a ton of adders on that property tax bill. So I think we need to be sensitive. On the other hand, I would be really interested in knowing how many residents in Ross approved Measure C. If we could, I guess we can't find that out. But, you know, we're going to have to do a lot of outreach and strategizing and educating. So Elizabeth Breckus.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to Bill's question, when we did that Citygate study, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason and Joe, but my recollection is the assumption was that we would eliminate the fire station and that fire personnel would not be here. Whereas another option that I think wasn't looked at is, what if we had the fire station personnel and a second truck available at San Anselmo, and then in an emergency, you know, one could go to Sleepy Hollow, but one would still be there and could possibly go to Ross if there was a second call. So I could be wrong on that, but that was my recollection. And we talked about it as, hey, that's a possibility, something that wasn't looked at. Am I right? And I have one other comment.
So yeah, I think you're accurate in the assessment that we didn't talk about moving wholesale one engine to create a 2-engine house. I think that it's also, the Citygate study did say that our staffing in the Ross Valley Fire Department to the west was light. And I think that's where this conversation came from, was that we recognized with 2-person engine companies and having 4 of them is a light response when you look at a structure fire that needs like 14 people.
And then the other point I wanted to make is about the insurance issue. And it's something I've been wanting to bring up at Ross Valley Fire. It's really close to my heart because I have now been canceled for fire 3 times. And, you know, what happens is insurance companies will look at their whole body of insurance, and then they'll be like, too many California properties, we need to divest. And then they'll send out notices of cancellation. And I, you know, was originally with Byron's Fund that went out, and then another one that reassessed and went out, and now a third one is doing the same. And it's honestly a very big deal. And so I would really, you know, I think it'd be good to take it up at Ross Valley Fire to find out how many people are doing this, because I did have an inspection to hopefully get my insurance to hang on to me. But and I was told by staff that they're having lots of this. So I don't know how big the problem is. I don't know if we know how big the problem is. I am worried about losing a fire station and having lots of residents lose fire insurance. But I think we should at least try and get a better understanding of that. Am I, you know, having all this bad luck, or how many people are having this problem? And if we did lose our fire station, then what would that do for people in town? So that's a big concern of mine as well. Thank you.
You got to stop having all those parties with tiki torches.
I don't know if you want me to address some of the questions. Some questions, obviously, we need to get back. I can address some questions, or you want to go to public comment now, and then, or how do you want to proceed?
Why don't we see if there's anyone on the phone who wants to make a comment? Linda?
I see.
I'm looking, I don't see.
I see Steve Burdo.
Really? Okay, there's one. Yeah.
Hi, Steve.
Madam Mayor, how are you? Long time no see.
Yeah, exactly.
I wasn't going to let you out meeting me today. Madam Mayor, members of the council, good evening. My name is Steve Burdo. I am a resident of San Anselmo and also have the honor of serving on the San Anselmo Town Council as well as the board of the Ross Valley Fire Department with your council members, Breathless and Kuehl. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to speak on this matter. Fire protection, as you know, is the responsibility of the municipal agency having jurisdiction, in this case, the town of Ross. As your council is aware, the Ross Valley Fire Department is a joint powers authority made up of Ross and 3 other municipalities, San Anselmo, Sleepy Hollow, and Fairfax. Ross joined the JPA in 2012, and it's important to recognize why that decision was made, primarily because Ross, with only a single engine company, cannot provide the depth of service needed for a fire incident or multiple incidents. Being part of a larger organization provided depth and supervision, both on and off the fire ground, fire prevention, training, and a host of other services. The staff report mentions a relatively low call volume within the town of Ross. And I feel it's important to note that that statement is generally true across all of the RVFD jurisdictions and comparable on a per capita basis as well. Any consideration of service level changes within the town of Ross will need to be closely coordinated with the Ross Valley Fire Department and neighboring jurisdictions. Shifting responsibilities and costs, as well as adjusting the pooled level of service, needs to be done in a thoughtful way, incorporating both short and long-term service level goals. As the Citygate report reveals, staffing is already light within the RVFD. Additionally, changes that eliminate an engine within the town of Ross on average will increase duplicate calls for the adjacent engine companies 1.5 to 2 times per week. Translated, that means 78 to 104 times per year, an engine company will come from a more distant location to serve residents of Ross in the adjacent communities served by the San Anselmo and Kempfield stations. The process in which your council considers this decision must include significant collaboration with the Ross Valley Fire Department, San Anselmo, and other key stakeholders, and with due consideration of the upstream impacts to your neighbors and partners within the Ross Valley Fire Department. You are all fine public servants, and I do not envy the position you're in and the options that you have to consider. Understand that, you know, this discussion is necessary, but as you begin this process, just want to encourage you to strongly collaborate and partner with both the Ross Valley Fire Department as well as your neighboring jurisdictions. Thank you so much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Steve, for your comments. Anybody else?
I'm not seeing any other. Here we go. Fran Capoletti.
Linda, did you say Fran Capoletti?
Yes, he should be coming up.
Okay, great.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
I wanted to say hello to the mayor and council members new and old, since it's been so many months without seeing so many. Can you hear okay?
Yes, thank you.
Right.
Welcome.
I was just struck by the fact that if you go to by the way, I'm the librarian at the Ross Historical Society, and I'm not speaking for them, but I'm speaking as a librarian who has a 150-year-old building. So we're much older than that 93-year-old. But if you go to our website, moya-rhs.org, front and center up there, you'll see a picture of the very site you're talking about. There's a great old house in the picture, which I just found out from another historian is the second house because the first burned down. So I just want to say there's a lot of history at this site, and I've done a lot of research on it, and I think it's great stories to tell, but you have a lot of challenges ahead, and I hope in some way, if you think I can be of help, I'd love to have the opportunity. You might also look to the town of Atherton is going through, to me, a similar type project. If none of you know about it, you might want to find out about how they had to go through. old facilities to get new. I also like where Joe pointed out how things change over time. That's important to know, how things change. But I like his 3 words of design, look, and feel. So as you go forward, I know you'll have a lot of challenges, but that's what I wanted to say tonight. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Fran, so much for those comments. We really appreciate it. Anybody else, Linda?
I don't see any other hands raised, Mayor.
Thank you. Joe?
Okay, well, thank you, council members. There were great questions and observations that you've mentioned. And some of them we'll need to get back on, some I could address now. Related to like the Public Works building, we did look, to clear up the site, what would it mean, and looked at some options. We had one option actually to rebuild Public Works, and then that cost was $34 million to build it on the other, to move it, build it with everything else. That being said, I think we have a much lower cost option than rebuilding that if we wanted to get which maybe like moving the building. We talked about an option of doing that. That being said, at this time, our decision was not to get into design. It's really what facilities to provide. And it was to get really to be able to give a cost range estimate so we know what we're, as we go through this. So certainly I think it's a great thing. We look at other options relate to like the Public Works and helping, that would help clear the site, for example, for paramedics to be in closer than showing in the graph drawing. And we look to follow through, but we really need this first decision of what facilities to build and to know we're somewhere in the cost range and the operational considerations when we do that. So, and the whole use of the post office site, certainly that would be another one to look in as we go down here. The survey questions very much we want to get right, and obviously I'll look to share them with council members. I want to get the right questions out. Obviously, it's critical we have the right pulse of the community, because in the end, they're the voters that are going to be on a bond measure. So, so we want to get that right. I see, and I think, Bill, Julie, I see your questions. Obviously, we'll look at other communities and where they're at and which ones. And Marin County, the only one that doesn't have, cities or towns that doesn't have a fire station is Belvedere, who gets it through Tiburon. That being said, Sleepy Hollow is, I think, 2,400 people, if I recall, Chief. They don't have, they're not a sea of town, but they're similarly situated that they don't have a fire station. It comes from a station in San Anselmo. They're at 2,400 people. But we will look at other communities throughout, and also grab the Ross School on the general obligation bonds, and continue to look at, Elizabeth, your questions on insurance. So we'll, in Beach, I will give these facilities here will respond on the administrative side. And one thing I could tell you, clearly, if our goal is not to keep having affordable, our facilities here are totally disjointed. Now, in the COVID world, that could work because we're not supposed to be together, but you have 3 different offices in odd places. You have a portable, and I don't think in the long run, I'm hoping 15 years from now, Ross isn't continuing to have staff in a portable like we did for the sleeping quarters for the fire. And I think it would help with the operational efficiency effectiveness, but we'll provide more information on that for you and the public as we go through. I do want to know from council on the process of community outreach. Obviously, we put a list of some of our staff ideas. Are there other thoughts you have for us? As we say, this is the beginning of the conversation, the discussions, and we do want to get the community involved. Is there some key stakeholders we should be reaching out? I listed, some of the traditional groups we know about, but I do want to hear, if there are other thoughts. And obviously you could tell me after if you think of it, next week, this is what we should do. That works fine. We have some time, but, right now we want to make sure we get the right process that leads us to the right decision, and we had, the community involved. So when we move forward, the communities with the process as we go to the next step. Elizabeth.
I'm hearing from so many families that they're so tapped out with COVID and everything, that I think it's gonna be really hard to just launch into a bunch of special workshops right off the bat. And I would suggest a survey to start. And that's easy for people to respond to. And I think that that's probably a good starting point. Thank you.
I think it's really helpful to have mailers, a really well-written mailer or a couple of really well-written mailers that really synthesize, here's what we need to decide. Here are some options. Here are the services. Here are the costs. And this is what we'll be discussing. At least, then people have right in their hand that information. They have they have a sense of a timetable. And I think I think that the same information should go out in an email, but I think mailers are pretty effective.
I'm sorry, Joe, you were going to say something.
Councilmember Kircher.
I think that one thing that people are going to want to know somewhere along the way is, what difference does this really make to us? What difference does a 2-minute slower response time make in terms of fighting a fire? It would be interesting to go back over the 3 fires that we have had and ask, how would it have been different if the fire people had arrived 2 minutes earlier? I don't know. I don't have enough experience. I know fires can spread very rapidly. And of course, the most serious outcome is somebody loses a life, somebody needs to be rescued and they're not rescued. I doubt that has happened, but I think people would want to sort of prioritize this. Are we looking at loss of property, maybe more damage, but not a lot more damage? Are we looking at a big difference here? I don't know whether it's even possible to provide that kind of information, but I think that's probably what people are looking at, some way to quantify this and prioritize it. And I think to a lot of people, and this ties in with some of the comments we heard earlier from other council members, the paramedic thing is something that everybody would probably agree, yes, we need the paramedics here right away if somebody's having a heart attack or has had some traumatic injury or they're bleeding. The sooner they get here, the better. I'm not sure it's as clear with respect to fire. So I just throw that out. If it's possible to make this a little less statistical and a little more concrete as to what the difference is.
I think that's really a good idea. I mean, for Measure K, when we were trying to pass the parcel tax for police and fire, I have to say the fire part of it was a harder sell. The real easy sell was the police. People really understood that without Measure K, we might not have local police. We might have police services provided by the county, and that made a difference. And I think that's what pushed Measure K through with such a high yes vote. And it's what you were saying, Bill, that people need to know what is the difference to them. And if there's how does it matter to me? And that's what will get a yes or a no vote.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can also share the Citygate presentation that was recorded, or if not, get that information, especially for you, Bill, since you're new to the council when we presented that. We talk about time temperature curve and that difference, and I think it'll help answer your questions.
Good, thank you.
Other council feedback, comments, questions, and obviously, as I said, you could, when you come up with ideas, please let me know. And thoughts. So
So do you have staff that's dedicated to working on the, I don't want to call them marketing materials, but materials to educate? I mean, who's going to be preparing all that stuff?
it's going to be a combination of, I'm looking at planning director Patrick Streeter and myself, and anybody else we can get.
Okay,
obviously, a small staff, there's only so many, but we are likely to get a consultant involved too.
okay. So I thought Patrick did a great job on the generator survey, but that was really simple compared to all these moving parts with these issues. Okay, anybody else? Shall we move on? Okay, thank you, Chief Weber, for your time and participation. Working very hard today.
Absolutely. Thank all of you.
All right, next is item number 13, Town Council and Staff Discussion of Preparations for Coming PG&E Power Safety Power Shutoff, PSPS, related to facilities and communication operations, including cell tower coverage. Looks like it's Rich and Eric.
Mayor McMillan and Town Councils, thank you very much. Rich Simonich, Public Works Director. So we all remember the 3-day power outage back at the end of October, lasted from Saturday night and October 26th into Tuesday night. And following that, we had a council meeting in December where council and staff discussed what worked and what didn't work during the PSPS. I think the consensus was that staff stepped up pretty good with the Police Department of Emergency Services, and we handled it pretty well. But there were some weak spots that could use some addressing. So those points requiring specific attention included cell phone service reliability, the traffic signal outages at the major intersections in Ross, providing power supply to the public from the public safety building and town hall to the development services portable, or would the portable require its own power generators itself, and providing portable cell phone and laptop chargers for the public and equipping town hall and maybe the police station with those type of services. The main thing we need to look at, of course, is what is PG&E doing to provide more resiliency in responding to the upcoming PSPSs. And they've been doing a lot of work working with the CPUC and within their own organization. Mainly the focus is on developing the microgrids that would allow PG&E to locate areas that are not probably not as high as a risk. Maybe a tier 1 area would not receive the PSPS as frequently as the tier 2 and tier 3 fire areas, and specifically in Ross. That would be most of Ross is in tier 2 and tier 3, so they would experience a longer PSPS. In general, though, PG&E is working to limit the duration of the PSPS throughout to 12 hours. That's kind of their goal, is to not go over 12 hours. Of course, we'd have to see how that eventually works out. So in response to those issues that we discussed at our December council meeting, what we did to address that, so Public Works worked with our electrical consultant, and we replaced the backup batteries at the Sir Francis Drake and Laurel Grove intersections, and we provided a location to hook up a brand new 4,000 watt generator so we could actually power these 2 intersection lights, which are actually operating off a single box, which made it easy. We just need a single generator to operate, keep both of those signals operating. Of course, we need to coordinate with Marin County to the south and San Anselmo to the north as to the operation of those signals in relation to traffic flowing north and south. We also installed a new generator hookup at the Development Services Portable, and we did purchase a second 4,000 watt generator to run the portable electronics. Except for HVAC, we won't be able to run those. We did determine it would be too expensive to hook up the large generator that operates the emergency services building and town hall with the portable. It would require installing a new electric pole and running new wires underground trenching and that sort of thing. So the best solution for now was to just install a special switch at the side of the building where we can hook up power and keep staff within the portable instead of having to go into the town hall like we did during the last PSPS. We had everybody together, and especially with the COVID-19 restrictions, keeping everybody as spread out as possible is going to be important. Another issue that came up from the folks over at the fire station is keeping that large generator going. They had to fill up these 5-gallon jerry cans and every couple hours go and pour fuel into the fuel tank for that large generator. So we worked with the police department to get purchase a large refueling station on a trailer so that we can run it up to a gas station nearby or one that's hopefully open, keep that filled up. I think it's at least as much capacity as the gas tank on the large generator. So that'll keep our firefighters ready to act on fires and not have to be running back and forth with 5-gallon gas cans. And then we did purchase some equipment to provide USB charge points and set up stations at the police department and town hall so that folks can charge their laptops and charge their cell phones. Of course, addressing the COVID-19 protocol of keeping 6 feet apart and being masked, that'll be important, and we'll see how that all pans out. When it comes to cellular phone service, so that's a little bit trickier. So that all depends on bringing power to the cell sites. And in Ross, we have 3 cell sites here connected to our buildings. We have AT&T, we have T-Mobile, and we have Sprint here. None of them have generators on site. They all have, or they're supposed to have, 8 hours of battery backup to keep the cell towers going. I don't have much information on when the last time they've checked out all of that equipment. That's something I'll be talking about here in a little bit. So the CPUC is working with PG&E and the cell providers to definitely address all of the shortfalls that they experience with loss of extended PSPS and the loss of cell phone coverage. In July 16th, 2020, the CPUC ordered the wireless companies to develop comprehensive plans to address these shortfalls. I mean, it's a statewide knowledge and sentiment that the cellular coverage really fell flat during the PSPS. All of the providers did respond to the CPUC, but with this ruling, there are 3 main bullet points that the cellular providers need to come up with. The first, within 60 days of the ruling, so that would be from July 16th, would be about mid-September, which is before the main PSPS season. They need to, the wireless providers should provide emergency points of contact to the local agencies, which is, I think that one of the most important things that we need to have is direct contact with the cell phone providers to get an idea, hey, when will we get a generator out here? What's your deployment strategy here in Ross? And get those direct answers. That's one thing that I found out last year during last October was when a generator appeared out by the T-Mobile site, there is a phone number there. I had to go through several layers until I finally talked to an operations guy. He's able to tell me, yeah, we're bringing it out there. We're going to keep it there for a couple of weeks. And then, if there's no PSPS, we're going to bring it back. So communication is going to be essential part of that. And it sounds like if the providers respond to this CPUC, we'll have that sort of information within 60 days. They should also adopt a 72-hour backup power requirement to ensure that a minimum level of service and coverage is obtained during disasters or power outages in the tier 2 and tier 3 high fire threats. So that kind of is working on the PG&E's going to be limiting the restoring of power in tier 2 and tier 3. So the cell companies are responding by coming up with a resiliency plan for tier 2 and tier 3 to maintain cellular coverage. So those are working together for a common goal. And then finally, the cell companies have 6 months to develop their communication resiliency plans and how they're going to be responding in detail to these PSPS events. So that really concludes my presentation, and we're here, Chief Masterson is here, and myself to answer any questions you might have on this item.
Questions?
Yeah, I have a question about communication during these planned power outages. When Marin Alert is down, and it is for most of the residents of Ross, if they don't have cell phone coverage and Comcast, we won't have Comcast at all during the planned power outages. For those of us who don't have legacy AT&T, Packville systems that are copper wired and rely instead on Comcast phone service for our so-called landline. I mean, essentially, as I see it, we can't get Marin Alert communications because they would come in over our cell phones or by way of a phone call to our landline, which again, if you have Comcast, as my wife and I do, wouldn't work. So I guess it's a question for Chief Masterson. Is there some sort of backup to let us know if we need to evacuate or something like that? I mean, how would we even know that we need to go? I suppose if a police car showed up with a megaphone and told us leave now, we could, but are there other ways to be in touch?
That's an excellent question, and it is very limiting if you have what most people have today is you have a voice over internet or you have cell phones. I'm in the same situation. I don't have a hardwired landline at my house either. So it is very limiting, and you're correct. When those systems do go down, there isn't a way to communicate directly. In an evacuation situation, we could send police officers from this jurisdiction as well as other jurisdictions. We could use the fire department as well. We have been working with Ross Ready with a radio system that they have in place with various residents throughout the town. And we are able to connect using that system. We have a desk system in the police department as well. In a last case scenario, we could use that system to communicate and pass information node to node, and residents could go out to their neighbors and pass on information. That's a last ditch effort, but it is available.
Yeah, I have one of those radios, part of the RossNet, and I'm a volunteer with that as well, not in my official capacity, but as a volunteer resident. And of course, you have to use that, you have to know to use it. and these radios, they're battery operated, and to leave it on for 3 days, I'm not sure it would last for 3 days. So I don't know. How would we even know to call in or to activate our radios if there were a fire danger? I suppose if we saw smoke and flames, we'd get on the radio. But I think there's still kind of a weak link there, and I don't know what the solution is. I talked to Joe a bit about this idea of using these NOAA weather alert radios, and perhaps there's something there too, where it's a radio that signals you that there's an emergency. Then you tune in with RosNet to our so-called incident command to find out, or should we all be active now? But it's still kind of a work in progress, and fire season seems to be bearing down on us. I hope this is something we can have at least a partial solution to.
The one other tool I'd like to add, not that we've used it for this because we haven't had to, it would be the siren on the station here. Obviously, if something was serious in communications, I would, we use it for the floods, and people know what that means, obviously in this case, but it would certainly say by using it, something's definitely up if you get this, on a October evening or morning or late, and we start blowing the siren, people will start looking around to find sources of what's going on. I think that's our other tool in town that reaches a lot of the town. There's no designated sound for what it means. But the one interesting thing that on when the PSPS is, some people seem to still have connectivity and some didn't. I don't know if it's the different cell providers, if it's the email systems or some, but it was interesting. Different people seem to be connecting. A lot of people were totally disconnected, but some had connections through some means. But, whether it was their cell, internet, emails. Other questions, staff?
I don't think anyone has any more questions. Are we good on this issue? Should we move on?
You want to ask for public comment?
Oh, thank you, Ben. Yes, public comment. Linda, there she is.
I don't see anyone.
Yeah, I don't see anybody either.
Okay, awesome. All right, the last item on the agenda is number 14, town manager update and council discussion on town activities in response to COVID-19.
Well, I was just going to give, an overview. Obviously, Marin County, the numbers got not good the last 2 months. We saw a spike in cases in June and July. I think and hearing from Dr. Willis, he gives 3 main categories, describes there's 3 main categories of cases that they've seen. One's the essential service workers. And you have the workers in the restaurants, the grocery stores, the contractors, some of the personal services, and usually not of the income. Quite frankly, a lot of it was people in the canal, a lot of our essential workers, and you saw a large outbreak of the 3. Where the Hispanic Latino population is 16% of the population, 75% of the COVID cases in Marin has been Hispanic and Latino, and 50% of the hospitalizations. The second category, he says, is skilled nursing assisted living places. Obviously, there has been outbreaks at a number of them. And these are Marin is at 57 deaths right now, which is high on a per capita basis. 43 of them have been of residents of assisted living and skilled nursing. So clearly the people that are not surviving COVID are elderly. 2/3 of the people that have died have been over 80 years old. So it's obviously that population. And then he gave the third category, though he did say it's a lot smaller than the first two of the cases, is what he called bad behavior. But he did say that's a small group compared to the other one. So obviously behaviors and masking up does matter, and hand washing and do the steps and social distancing. We've seen the numbers are improving some in Marin. We'll see if we can keep it going. It still has a ways to go. The one good sign in recent weeks, we're at the lowest number of hospitalizations right now at 11 that we've been in over 2 months. So that's a positive sign. Obviously, we know once things open up and people's behavior changes, things could spike back up. So obviously, you know, we got to keep continuing to be vigilant and as we proceed. Yesterday, the Marin County Public Health Officer, Dr. Willis, released new guidelines for youth camps, activities, and childcare. Obviously, it goes hand in hand with the schools. There's obviously new directives for schools. And last week, yesterday, they had released guidelines that are effective as of August 17th. They're increasing the number of people in a group from 12 to 15. One thing that they're saying, though, is where before during the summer they had the 12 could be in sports and things within 6 feet of distance. Starting August 17th, the new guideline is keep them 6 feet away. So if you're doing a sports, you can do a drill activity, but where in the last 2 months they said, you know, this group of 12 can like play, you know, soccer or baseball. Now within just that group of 12, now it's more of a strict social distancing. We're working on a child care, and I know Gretchen had a conversation, I know, with Dr. McDowell today about different ways to help support the school community and child care and activities Ross Recreation could do. Ross Recreation, quite frankly, from a management part, it's been, you know, hard getting the offices and workspaces, but Ross Recreation's been the most challenged. Obviously, what's a safe program? How do you do it? You know, limits. So, you know, and we're finding the space, and obviously working with Dr. McDowell as they start school up, what are the programs going to look like? I think that's, unless there's any specific questions. I'm looking, just so you know, Ross has COVID. Ross has 15 people that got COVID within Ross, which if you look on a per capita basis, we're somewhat a little higher than San Anselmo and Fairfax on a per capita basis, lower than Larkspur. Don't know what that means, but just giving you the information and looking. So there have been COVID cases in Ross, 15. I have no way of knowing, you know, what the serious or anybody hospital, but anybody deceased. I don't have that type of information. So that is my update. If you have any questions.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Joe. The final item is no action items. Any council correspondence people want to report on?
I got a lot of emails about the dog park.
I think everybody's email box is probably pretty darn full right now.
Future council items. Any proposals?
Well, I think I'm not muted. If I may.
Go ahead.
I'd like to go back to taking off August. This is not an uncommon concept of other council members, and it was certainly the practice and tradition for years for the Ross-town. And so, I'd like to consider that in the future. I think it's nice for the residents. Granted, all of us are here, and obviously this meeting and showed that, and the pandemic is, true of that. But I do think that there could be, especially, we're not disrupting planning items. Look at how we had none. They could go before, they could go after. Staff can accommodate them as best they can, but I think it's nice for staff and council and for the residents to take August off. Thank you.
Does anyone want to join in and having that be an agenda item? I'd be happy to have that discussed. Our POA always takes August off, so I know there is some tradition. On the other hand, I think it's really good that we were able to meet tonight to address the school needs, given the urgency of what they're trying to do. Hopefully we won't be in the same situation next August. Anybody else for future items? Okay, then we will adjourn the meeting at 8:34. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and council members.
Enjoy your vacation, Joe.
Thank you.